Hello, welcome to this Tuesday afternoon conversation with me. My name is Adelene. In today's conversation, we will be talking about or discussing about scoliosis as an imbalance, physical imbalance in the body, as much as a mental, emotional aspect of approaching and practicing with. So this, I would like to share this with you because this is really something that is close to my heart, and I've lived with this for decades since I was a teenager when I was diagnosed with scoliosis, when I was told that I have scoliosis. So welcome for those of you who are just joining the session. And I was just saying that in today's session, I would very much like to, as much as me sharing with you my experience in terms of practicing and teaching with scoliosis, but also to hear from you what questions you might have about this, about scoliosis, or if there's anything that has come up in your practice or in your student that you have observed with asymmetry with scoliosis. This is an area that, like I said earlier, that I'm really passionate about because I have lived with it through difficult times where I had to have lots of painkillers and lots of help from other therapists in order to just move through, push through my day. So I'm really hoping that there'll be some form of inspiration or some ideas that might be helpful for you or your students in approaching, practicing and living with scoliosis. Hi Sarah, hi Carolyn, hi Steph, hi Mommy Ali, welcome. Yep. Okay, so firstly I'd like to say that scoliosis is a medical term used by the medical profession. Hi Liz. It is used to describe a condition of the spine presenting a lateral curvature from side to side. So naturally for most of like human evolution, that we are upright, being seated, walking or standing upright, naturally we have our kyphosis and lordosis from side view. So if you're looking at me from the side, there's a little dip in my neck. In fact, I have this model here to demonstrate what I'm trying to explain. So if you look from side view, so right exactly how I'm sitting right now, this is the spine where there's a little dip into in the neck where it curves in. Yeah, this is a lordotic curve, as with the lumbar spine, which has a lordotic curve slightly curved in. And the thoracic spine, which is the upper back spine, has a slightly more rounded kyphotic curve, as with the sacrum, which is wedged inside the within the pelvis bowl itself. So this is natural for everyone to have a most stable, congruent, supportive spine in verticality, at least, before we explore like horizontal position or lying down position. But with scoliosis, what I was mentioning just a moment ago is that from the back view or front view, so from looking from someone from behind, like so, that there is a side bend to one side or the other side, or a double curve that goes one way and then another curve goes the other way, which then offers a very different dynamics in terms of how we support ourselves in verticality. Yeah. And just halfway through the term scoliosis as defined in the medical profession, it's a lateral deviation or abnormal curvature of the spine, and usually accompanied with rotation, meaning a twist. That's because the body is three-dimensional. It's not just a flat piece of paper where you can just bend from one side to the other side. So there is also a rotation component to it because of there's a curve on top of another curve there is the scoliosis lateral curve on top of the full natural curve that I explained earlier from side view. And that poses the issue with how the organs and other parts of the body might have to compensate and reorganize in terms of supporting the body, or at least functioning and moving through daily activities and postures. So some of you are just joining. Welcome. Isabella, Christine, Hen, Fiona, yes, welcome. If you do have, Baroness, hi, if you do have any question, it's best to type it in like right at the beginning now, so that there's enough time for me to also weave it into our conversation, because I would very much like to share a short practice with you in the second half of this session. Also, hi Edith. Hi Papa. And what I wanted to say next is, as it's categorized or labeled as scoliosis, often also there is an angle that we measure. We call it the Cobb angle, where from an X-ray, when you measure the angle of the curvature of the spine, anything that's above a certain deviation, I mean, the number of the degree has been shifting for several decades now. At one time it was above 10 degrees, at some point it was above 30 degrees. That is categorized, considered as someone has scoliosis, this condition called scoliosis. But to me, that's really a number where maybe surgeons and the medical profession will need to somewhat qualify that this person needs help, or this person requires treatment, intervention. And what is intriguing for me, I've seen many consultants and surgeons for this condition that I've lived with, is the omission of the emotional and mental aspect of living with scoliosis. Therefore, to me, when someone say that, oh, I have scoliosis, or I live with scoliosis, I have this condition called scoliosis, which I can resonate, I'm looking at that person not just from a physical asymmetrical, or there's some imbalance. Of course, yes, there is some physical imbalances in the body in terms of maybe tension on one side, uneven pull on the other side. And there is also uneven load and distribution in terms of loading and tension in the body. Yes, I acknowledge that is true. But at the same time, for someone that comes with scoliosis, and from my experience, is that that person is basically expressing that there is this emotional component and mental component of living with it. It could be, well, at least I could speak for myself when I was growing up, especially for teenagers as well, that a sense of guilt or shame, that maybe an idea that this mental repetition that I keep telling myself is like, why does it have to happen to me? Why is it like, why me? And possibly also fear of being judged, fear of how do I fit into other activities, or I mean group activities, and being accepted by friends, and how do I look from the outside? Self-esteem is affected when there is a physical dysfunction, or at least how it looks like from the outside. It's slightly twisted, and one shoulder is higher than the other, or walking quite funnily because it's lopsided as I walk. So it's really interesting that that these are the things that are equally as important as the physical tension and back pain that comes with this condition. I mean, saying that, not everyone has back pain with scoliosis. Some people might have quite a accentuated curve, but very little discomfort in the body. They live through it comfortably. Whereas some might have the smallest mild scoliosis, mild curvature of the spine, whilst experience extreme just discomfort and pain that disturb or interrupt their sleeping, to be restful throughout the night, to sleep throughout the night, which is to do with positions that we could potentially address and look at. So now that I've spoken for a while, I have quite a few more things I wanted to share, but I'd like to also welcome for those of you who have just joined us, Jess, Joe, Andrea, Susan, hello. If you have any question that I was saying earlier, if you have any question or things that you have come across for yourself or your student, please type it in the comment box so that I can weave it into our conversation now. Hi, Catherine. Welcome. Okay. So apart from physical, we talk about, yes, it comes with certain mental aspect and emotional aspect. And when I mention mental, it means it often comes with one's relationship with the condition. My relationship with this condition, how do I see it? Do I see it as a dysfunction, a disability? What and how do I see this and my relationship with this? So often I use this as an example of, I too have short-sighted, so I do wear contact lenses or glasses, contact lenses. For someone with short-sighted, do we then categorize that person as like dysfunction, or is there some disability in sight, in terms of vision? And with scoliosis, with that, yes, then we'll just say, okay, I'll just put on glasses, I'll just wear contact lenses, I'll just do some intervention to correct my vision, to be able to continue function and see and interact with the world. Whilst with scoliosis, to me, it's simply then, yes, I have this condition, just like, yes, I do have short-sightedness. I have short-sightedness, I wear glasses or contact lenses. I have this condition that I live with called scoliosis, and therefore there is certain spinal hygiene that I need to maintain every day. There is certain things that I need to do, might not be for another person, but the other person might have something else they need to deal with if they have a knee thing that's going on, right? So firstly is to take a moment right now, especially if you live with it or someone you know or close to you live with scoliosis, just taking a moment to connect to, when you see or hear that word scoliosis, what is the immediate response that you have that's arising within you? When you hear me say the word scoliosis as a condition that, of course, a word and condition that you associate with, that you're maybe interested in, what is the immediate first thing that bubbles up within your awareness? Is it a thought? Is it an emotion? So someone mentioned shame, yeah. Imperfect, yeah. And how do you resonate with abnormality, abnormal? Yeah. And these, yeah, beautifully curved spine. Yes, beautifully curved spine. Yeah. Extra care. Yes. So when you hear the word scoliosis, the thing that come up for you, extra care. Sadness. Okay. And so far, all that I've seen that has typed in the comment box, it's so far not about a visual, physically impaired or visually, at least aesthetically, issue that we're dealing with. Rather, there's lots of more of emotion and mental ideas about this condition. So how important, can you imagine how important that is when practicing or working with someone with scoliosis, that yes, there is some immediate things that we need to deal with, which is discomfort in the body, or functionality in terms of how to be optimize optimal functioning of the body in terms of daily chores and activities. But most of you also mentioned so many aspects, the other aspect of living with scoliosis, just this word itself, like sadness, someone said. Yeah, multidimensional. So someone asked, can scoliosis develop from injury causing one-sided long-term permanent change in gait, restricted on one side? Yeah. Yes, this is the next thing I will talk about, which can be structural or functional. So scoliosis, in short, we can really see it in two different parts, which is it a structural scoliosis or is it a functional scoliosis? Structural scoliosis is something that someone has usually born with, or probably there's a deformation from the growth of the bone structure itself, or there is some syndrome from like Marfan syndrome or cerebral palsy or other muscular neurological things that the body or nervous system is dealing with, and therefore affect the curvature and lateral curvature of the spine. But here, if it's something that is caused by an injury, probably maybe when someone in the past has fell and probably twisted their ankle or knees, for a while, maybe for a couple of weeks or months even, that person might be walking to in a way to avoid the load on that particular ankle or knee. So if I were to stand back, yeah. So for example, if I've twisted my ankle for some time, during that few weeks or months, I was saying, I might just be avoiding loading on my right ankle, and most of the time I'll be walking more with my left leg, and therefore over time that might cause some muscular imbalance and tightness on one side more than the other, in terms of functionality, and that's why we call it functional scoliosis, because that asymmetry or imbalance, it's serving a function or position or posture to support the movement of that person. So it can be, but most often that when it's functional, it's also more easier somewhat to manage and to reverse or to to take care of, to treat, than if it's a structural, because structural is something that it's the bone itself that might have a different shape that is causing the curvature, whereas functional is probably just a re-education of muscle or functioning of the body in order to come back to more harmony between sides, left and right, front and back. And in terms of how whether it will have a permanent change in gait and restricted on one side, well, nothing is permanent. Firstly, nothing is permanent. Everything changes. Breathe in, breathe out. It's how we practice and how we work with than what we can or cannot do. So when someone has or present itself with some imbalance within the body caused by injury, just considering how to modify to find a little bit more harmony between sides to re-educate the functional usage of the posture, of the position or movement in terms of day to day. And that could gradually over time re-educate a more optimal way of moving or loading and practicing. So it's not a permanent thing, I would say, in terms of if someone were to have a asymmetry because of injury, unless that has an impact on the bone structure, deformity of the bone structure or fracture itself that requires other intervention. But otherwise, if it's a muscular compensation, then most often we could have ways and determination, of course, and commitment to work with re-educating and repatterning the body. There is a question here about, as a teacher, I would keep an awareness of that if a student tells me they have scoliosis, will be good to know how to be careful in certain asana, neck in inversions. I found I need to be careful with twists that can sometimes feel like they aggravate discomfort or put strain on the spine. Yes, I'm hoping to share with you also a position of twists in a moment when we practice, and see how we can navigate around twists and sense and feel our way into what is harmonious and healthy and supportive of the asymmetry or the imbalance within the body. Teaching yoga, it's asymmetrical. So teaching yoga is asymmetrical. Been 7.5 years of restricted ankle one-sided, and nerve damage the other side. I'm working on it. Yes, thank you for sharing. Yes. So as yoga teachers, I appreciate and understand that when we demonstrate, often we'll demonstrate on one side, and then students will be like doing their practice, and it might over time habitually just because of how it's being presented and demo and view. So be mindful of probably using the other side as much, demonstrating with the other side as much. Or sometimes I would demonstrate at an angle, instead of mirroring, so that I could actually use the same side as the student. So there are many ways of also approaching and working around demonstrating as a teacher. So Katie's asking, over my lifetime there was a separateness to the condition. I felt it was different, and it was something that wasn't mentioned or discussed. It was just something about me. This is why it is so valuable to be having a discussion like this, to bring light to the condition and reduce the emotional aspect of the separateness or even silent enduring that can be there. Yes, thank you for sharing that, Katie. Definitely. Scoliosis, it's something that the condition, I wanted to say common, but at the same time it does affect a big population. It's just that to an extent, the curvature, to an extent, whether that person requires intervention or treatment or some special attention and care, or to simply live your day and not having the awareness of the asymmetry and imbalances. But really the key word is awareness, whether we have asymmetry or complete symmetry. By the way, there's no complete symmetry in our body. We only have one heart, which is a little bit snuggled into the left side of the chest and lungs. We only have one part, or one liver, and reproductive organs. It's just that there are things in our body that are not just a pair, not exactly symmetrical. So appreciate the body's design of how it's being presented and function. So one more thing, then we'll go into practice, which I wanted to talk about is again, this is something probably why I landed myself also with scoliosis, with yoga for scoliosis, is that I've seen many different therapists approach different approach, from massage to chiropractic treatment to acupuncture to various different physiotherapy, of course. Some might experience braced, right? Wearing a brace since young to support the curvature and growth. They all are helpful, but I was still craving for something deeper that would acknowledge and not push aside, acknowledge the mental, emotional aspect as we have discussed, and also the experience of having an easefulness and fluidity in terms of my energetic experience and expression of this body. So beyond just talking about this quadriceps lumboris and that trapezius muscle, that specific piece of muscle that we need to activate or strengthen or stretch, that there is a unspoken subtle flow in the whole structure in expressing movement or expressing a position. And that is when the whole community, head to toe, bones, muscles, organs, fluids, all are singing together as an orchestra. They're all in sync and in harmony in expressing movement or position. So there will be moments where I feel disjointed in terms of, oh, okay, that's really stuck in this area. It's just a knot and restriction, maybe restriction in some part of my shoulder blade or my upper back. And yes, we could diagnose it or probably do some assessment to assess whether that is a trap muscle, if a piece of subscapular is knotted up or restricted, how to work with stretch or strengthen certain other parts of the muscle group to support and stabilize. But also there is somewhat a roadblock. It just feels like things are not moving through from my lower back through my upper back into my neck and head. There is no continuity in the expression of my movement, of my position of sitting or standing. And I'd like to hopefully translate that in one of the positions that we're practicing in a moment, to actually feel, yes, we can go a little bit more specific into, okay, the gluteus maximus and quadriceps lumboris or your quadriceps, but also to actually zoom out to have a bigger, fuller picture of the whole body expressing the shape or the movement. So hopefully that will come through in a moment when we practice. So that's, to me, there is an energetic continuity and flow and fluidity in that expression. And therefore, despite slight asymmetry, slight imbalances in the body, that there is a freedom of the body expressing or functioning in my day-to-day. So I'll just read one or two more questions or maybe comments, and then we'll move into practice. We won't need lots of props today. If you do have like 2 blankets and 2 bolsters, maybe that is more towards the end when we come into relaxation. Thank you very, very much for this. Would you have any recommendation on a relaxed sitting position instead of a chair position for someone with thoracolumbar scoliosis? This is a very specific question about sitting. Whether you're sitting on the floor or on a chair, it is important that we maintain at least neutral spine. Neutral spine meaning from side view, like looking from side on, that we maintain the curvature of the neck and the lumbar spine, therefore the pelvis, in order to support the optimal, at least the optimal as much as possible, the stacking up of the spine. because literally you can see here how the spine is planted like a plant, planted into this flower pot, I call it. The pelvis is like a flower pot, and if the flower pot is slightly tilted when it's like kind of where it's sitting is slightly tilted, you can imagine how the spine will have to compensate. And this is not just with someone with scoliosis, but any other person. If someone's like slightly sitting kind of lopsided to the right side of the buttocks, to the right side of the buttocks like this, because they are crossing their legs maybe, and you can imagine what's happening to the spine having to compensate to come back upright. So the key thing is neutral spine and level flower pot. And there are different ways that we can work with leveling the flower pot, whether to put a little face towel or something to sit on one side of the buttocks in order to find the leveling of it, or the dropping of the flower pot, so that it's a little bit more easeful in terms of maintaining uprightness. The other key thing about sitting is to make sure the knees are lower than the hip bone. Yeah. So instead of sitting like 90 degrees like this, you can see knees still a little bit lower than the hip bone, but it could definitely work better for my spine if the knees are much lower than the hip bone at an angle. So then I could come back into a little bit more of a lumbar curve, then rounding the lower back. Right? So just play around with the height of your chair until there's a sense of lightness and easefulness on the spine. I would love to do this in more detail in terms of postures and positions. I am putting something together so that I could share it with wider groups. So if you're interested, do keep in touch with me. Either the best thing is it's on my email list, contact list, so that I can let you know when it's launched, because there's a section by section of looking at or probably practicing or some more practical things that we can discuss extensively. Instead of sitting straight on the chair or lying down on bed, how could I relax at a healthy position on the sofa? Okay. Well, we'll need support. Probably recline yourself, but have support at the back in order to, especially across the lumbar spine, across the lower back spine, yeah, so that the spine is not. So instead of slouching back and sitting back on the sofa like so, that you have a little bit more of a lumbar curve. The back, yeah, that can be helpful. But again, it's something that we'll probably have to look at in a separate conversation in terms of postures and position, because I really want to go into practice. You have a clever way to remind oneself to stop crossing the leg when sitting. I always catch myself and correct. Yeah, so about crossing the legs. The best reminder is actually the back actually getting sore. So pay attention when you're sitting for too long, or probably asymmetrically. Notice the muscle actually would start to scream, and that's really a big signal. But hopefully before that every now and then that you are adjusting and sitting more to really feel the sit bones more evenly on the chair that you're sitting. And I do this all the time when I'm in the restaurant, when I'm sitting in like various different chairs out and about. So not always that I can be at home sitting on the floor and my meditation cushion and all. So just something that we'll have to remind ourselves and remember as we go about our day. And that includes standing position also, like standing upright, whether we're leaning to one side or not. Okay, I am ready to practice. Are you? And what I'm about to share with you in terms of practice is as much for someone living with an asymmetry or imbalance, but as much as for anyone who we would like to encourage a little bit more awareness to, in terms of functionally, how they are dominant on one side and overusing or compensating with the other side. So during practice, again, yes, with or without scoliosis, during practice, pay attention to how sensation is showing up from moment to moment. If you need to take a rest, I mean, it's not particularly exertive. We're not going to headstand or handstand like this today. But if you need to take a pause and rest, or simply just watch right now of the practice, and you can replay it later. That's the thing. So this is recorded. I mean, on Instagram Live, I appreciate it. It's only 24 hours, but it will be on Facebook Live there. And eventually I'll also post it on my YouTube channel. And you can replay it to practice. So take a pause, a rest whenever you need to rest. Pay attention to sensations showing up in the body, avoiding anything that is sharp and sudden in the body in terms of sensation. If it's something that you're feeling the body's working, is engaging, then we can negotiate. We can go like stay a while longer, breathe in and out, and negotiate a little. I call it negotiate a little bit more. But if it's like really spasming and strong, it's something that is like straining rather than engaging. So there's two different words: straining in the body, strain in the body, versus yes, there's some engagement that you're working on in the body. That pay attention to that difference so that you can take time for yourself to modify, to pause at any time. Yeah. Well, anything with the head. So there's a question about embroidery and without bending one's head forwards. Well, we could potentially, I was just doing some reading earlier, and reading to book will be like kind of, I have to tip my head down and all. So I would sit myself, whether it's something to recline and to support my back comfortably, but put pillow on my lap. Like so, like literally cushion, pillow, blanket on my lap, enough for me to support my arms so that I can do it like at this level, then trying to do it at this level looking down. So try supporting your arms maybe a little higher so that there's less strain in the neck. And that's more back care stuff also. It's not for anyone really. So are you ready? Are you ready? Okay, like I said, feel free to watch or join in, and I'll guide you through. Okay. So firstly, I'd like to invite you to lie on your back with your knees bent in constructive rest position. So, let me see. And if you need a little pillow for your head, just have a little blanket pillow for your head, as little as possible, as much as you need, as little as possible. And preferably lying on a flat, firm surface instead of a bed, so you have that firm, flat surface to give you a sense of feedback as to which part of your body has firm pressure contact against the ground. Definitely you can use a carpeted area or your yoga mat to give you a little bit of cushion, but just enough to cushion the body, but still able to feel the firmness of the ground. And as you lie there, just noticing the flat surface against the contour and different terrain of your back. So there is some protrusion of your rib cage, of the back of your pelvis. There's a little gap behind the small of your back of your neck, maybe behind your shoulders. And this is the part that is equally important that I, when I teach yoga for scoliosis, specifically when there is disorientation in terms of where we are in space, the key component is proprioception, to have a sense of where we are in relation to our surrounding, therefore in relation to myself. So sensing where your body begin and where the floor meet your body, different parts of the body, back of your arm, back of your pelvis, back of your head. And just feel comfortable, easy breath before we roll over onto one side. And now when you roll over to your side, simply lengthen the underneath side as you slide yourself down. So you're really stretching out the underneath side as you just rest your head on your arm like a pillow. Doesn't matter which side to start. We're going to do both sides anyway, but pay attention to how much contact, how your breath is responding to this shape, the sensation that is coming up that's accompanying this shape being on your side, the sensation against your side body, that side of your lungs, that side of your waist. Just a few breaths there, noticing. This is the part where we're noticing the discrepancy between sides, especially when we roll over to the other side in a moment. So you can notice and become a little bit more aware and conscious of different sensation in the body showing up, which is key because sensation will continue to shift as you evolve in your practice. There is no set formula to practicing with scoliosis. I don't have a specific sequence for scoliosis. But what I'm really interested in sharing with you is educating the recognition of sensation showing up and what does it mean and what is it asking you to do, what is it asking of you. Let's go to the other side. So you're going to slide the underneath side open and rest your head onto the pillow of your arm and just noticing the contact of this side now against the floor. Different maybe experience, sensation of the body compared to the other side. Your breath maybe. Is it more accessible to breathe into the front layers or the back layers of your lungs being on this side? And acknowledging the difference in sensation between the left and right. And just a few more breaths here, just noticing the breath and the lung, the side lung, palpating and pressing, releasing the change in pressure against the support surface. Noticing how receptive is the breath to this side of the lung versus the other side of the lung, because the lungs get slightly displaced when there is a thoracic curvature. And let's now roll onto your back into your knee span, feet hip width apart position. We're going to come into bridge pose. So hands can be on the belly, which is a little bit more accessible. If arms out to the side, it's going to be a little bit more challenging in terms of your core work. But we're not immediately going into core work as yet, but we're really assessing if the discrepancy again as we begin to load the body and release the body. So feet hip width apart. Sometimes I put my hands on the belly to start, which is also really helpful to notice if one hip is moving higher or faster sooner than the other side. So I kind of touch the front of the hip, not to push it down, but simply just place my hand there as a detective. As I push into my feet and come up into bridge pose, now we're not going to hold it up there for long. You can come up and down. I want you to notice if there is one hip that is rising up a little sooner than the other. And if there is, can you slow that side of the hip down to match up? And also, more than likely, if there is any discrepancy between the size of the hip that is rising up and down, there's also a discrepancy in your feet in terms of loading, whether you're pushing into one foot more than the other. So just noticing if you're loaded into your right foot more, left foot more. If in doubt, try literally shifting into your left foot more as you push up, or into your right foot more as you push up. Whichever side is more convenient, that's probably your preferred pattern. That's probably the habitual side that you tend to engage more, use more. And notice the sensation in your abdomen, your buttocks, left buttocks, right buttocks as you push into your feet. More than likely, when you push into your right foot, the right buttocks engages more. Just noticing. Whilst all this is happening, could you notice the shoulders and neck? Are they tightening or restricting or holding? How could you release your shoulders in order for the pelvis to lighten, to float up? And notice the left and right side of the shoulders. This also has to do with if there's any asymmetrical imbalance, tension that is on one side more than the other side. Just noticing how it really rounds that shoulder forwards and how you could consciously release that shoulder, really dropping the weight of your shoulder as the pelvis elevates. So you can really keep going up and down and explore your shoulder discrepancy as with the feet weight-bearing discrepancy between left and right. You have your hands to give you a rough idea of which hip is moving forwards than the other to navigate. But know that we are not correcting the body. We're finding some harmony in how it expresses that shape without overloading on one side. So that's a different intention than trying to fix something in the body. And that's the mental bit that often gets in the way of our practice. And now slowly resting the pelvis down. Take a moment, pause. And we're going to transition from here into all fours, into cat-cow. So cat-cow is something that many of you have done 1,001 times. So from all fours position, rounding and extending. Take a moment to do this with eyes closed so that you can sense and feel the connection from head to tail. So that it's a continuation of extension from head to tail. There's a continuation of flexion from head to tail. Now, as much as you are coming into cat-cow from the aspect of bending the spine forwards and back, could you move into flexion extension for the muscles and soft tissue layers? So really sensing how the muscle and tissue layers are elongating the posterior back portion into flexion. The front layers of them, front and back, interchangeably. And involving the organs doing this movement. So noticing the front part of your lungs opening, the back part of your lungs rounding and opening. And now begin to notice the left side and right side as you continue to cat-cow. So you may keep going with your cat-cow, but pay attention to just doing cat-cow as if you are focusing just on the left half of your body doing cat-cow. And then switch over to doing cat-cow with your right half body. And notice sensation. Again, it's all about sensation and therefore making choices from there. If there is one side that requires a little bit more breathing suggestion, if there's almost like the breath is hitting a wall, how you could palpate and give it a few more puff of breath in order for it to be a little bit more breathable, juicy in its texture. And at some point also giving the spine a little jiggle and shake, which is really important to lubricate the joints and also maintain some hydrating the tissue. So one thing I really like to do is some hula hoop around the waist. So circling one way and circling the other way. And notice there'll be one direction of your hula hoop that tends to be more convenient than the other side. So notice the inconvenient side and maybe repeat that a little while longer before you move on. And from there, in all fours, keep the rounded flexion, rounded position where you're opening your back body. And begin to shift forwards and back between your hands and knees. Maybe take your hands a little bit forward so you have more space to move forwards and back, but keep the rounded position, flexion of your spine. And as you move back and forth, pay attention to the tightness restriction just running along one side of your spine more than the other, if there is any discrepancy. And pay attention to find a little bit more harmony between sides as you gradually fall from here back and down into child's pose. When you come forwards into child's pose, pay attention to the ribs that sticks out the most. So if you come back into sitting for a moment, if you put your hands on your lower ribs, like literally the ribs that sticks out, especially when we were in bridge pose, it's usually more obvious there when we come into extension, when we come into a little back bend. If there is one rib that sticks out more than the other, when we come into child's pose, can you encourage that rib? So for me, it's my left rib that sticks out more than the other side. So for me, I'm really quieting down my left rib as I come forwards into child's pose. So there's a little bit more volume in my back lungs as I fall into child's pose flexion, where the thighs support the sides of your body. So that already encourages a little bit more volume and space into the posterior lungs. Just a few breaths there in child's pose. And coming back and up into all fours. We're gonna need a wall. So I have a wall behind me to give me feedback. This is the part I was saying, a more of an energetic flow and continuation of the whole body expressing the position and movement. So as I come into all fours and push my leg back against the wall, adjusting the distance so that allows my leg to fully extend. As I inhale, I can just relax and collapse a little bit. As I exhale, I'm really reaching the legs from the center of my body. So from the upper waist center of my body into the lengthening of the leg. But at the same time, when I extend from the center into my legs, I'm also reaching from the opposite direction through my neck and head. So there's a rounding, collapsing, dismantling of the shape. As I exhale, there is a reach, forward reach, and also backward reach. So that there's a continuation from head to tail, beyond the tail spine into the legs. So there's an uninterrupted line of energetic line of force as we move into leg extension. Try one leg, try the other leg. And notice, especially if there is lumbar scoliosis, meaning if the curvature is in the lower spine, one side might feel a little disjointed, which may take a few more reps to find some connection from your center or from the center to the head, from the center to the back leg against the wall to give you that reference. The wall is a reference. Try both sides and then releasing. Take a moment, pause, rest. I was really wanting to, let's do this. Let's do the twist, because I was thinking, like, in terms of how much I can cover more with you. So lots more that I've planned for this session. So come from your all fours, come back into seated in Virasana for a moment. We're not going to be there for long. Shift the pelvis over to the left side, so your legs are on your right side. And then take your right foot forwards, so that your right foot is touching your left knee. Okay, so it's more like this. Yeah. So again, I was sitting here. I shift the buttocks over to the left side, so my legs are on my right side, and pick my right foot forwards and touching my left knee. And from there, I want to sit well under my left sit bone and the outer left thigh. My right sit is completely off the floor. So it's almost like this. I'm going to bring my hands on the outside of my left thigh. I'm not going to go any further. I'm not trying to pull myself into rotation, into twist. But if anything, I'm just going to put my hands on somewhere on your left side, outside of your left thigh. Both hands are there on the floor. And use your right sit bone. Give your right sit bone and right pelvis a little lift to take you further into rotation. It comes from, the rotation comes from the base of the pelvis as you spiral and rotate. And from there, continue with a little bit of a cat-cow. So we know that we can do cat-cow like so, but within the twist, it's going to be even smaller in terms of its excursion, how much you can flex or extend. So gradually, inch by inch, vertebra by vertebra, getting a little bit more flexion extension as you move into your rotation twist. Notice this side. And take your time to transition and notice the other side twisting. So I know this is going to take a little bit longer, the twist part, but for now, for this session, I'd like to just usher you along a little bit so that I can also show you a release position. So sliding the pelvis over to the right side, and then take the right foot forwards. Yeah. Both hands on outside of your right thigh now. Use your left sit bone to give you a little bit of a lift into rotation, into twist, so you're well seated on your right thigh and right sit bone. And as you breathe in and out into rotation, give a little bit of a flexion, extension, cat-cow, segment by segment, like literally segment by segment of the spine, moving up to your thoracic spine. So you will meet wherever there is restriction, and that's probably where we need a little bit more time to palpate in and out. So just notice where's the restriction and where do you need a little bit more time to articulate as you move into your rotation. Notice your willingness and generosity in this moment, rather than that demanding, wanting, fixing. That you're doing this as a form of finding harmony, easefulness in the body, expressing movement. And from here, come back to neutral, come back to center. There's another position that I'd like to introduce for strengthening. But I will have to skip that and quickly show you a release position. So if you're interested, that is actually it. I actually did post it on my Instagram, so you can look at the post, which is on the 30th of March, which is on boat pose Navasan, where you come into cosmic egg and then taking one leg up to explore this discrepancy between the right side of your abdominal and psoas muscle, left side, in order to find a little bit more symmetry between the sides. But for now, bring in either 2 bolsters or a couple of blankets. If you have 2 bolsters, you're going to position it this way, long and across. This is just an extra if you have that extra pillow behind, where you're resting on your front. This again, I have the photo of it in my Instagram post and Facebook post, which is really, really nice for anyone who wants to release postural tension along the back. So I have my pelvis, pubic bone pelvis supported on the bolster, the rest of the body. The arms could be anywhere feels convenient, easy, or even here, turn the head to one side. And this is just so that it's not overstretching the tops of my feet. And you can really be here and breathe here for as long as you need. You can even stay here for the rest of the time as we come to conclusion. Now I appreciate that I know the Instagram live is running out in terms of time. I would like to talk to you for another 10 minutes if you are willing. So I'm gonna restart the Instagram for some of you. Okay. Let's see. Okay. Yeah. So in the prone release position, which is this last position where you can lie on your front, that's I was saying earlier, it was really helpful to release postural tension along the back, along the neck. So you could definitely spend a couple of minutes there, especially towards the end of the day, where there's just a long day of upright sitting or standing. So you can try that. And again, all that I have shared, it's not just for scoliosis, it's for any maybe imbalances, asymmetry, or even I'm saying imbalance in terms of tension held in the body. So just noticing how we could slowly, gradually be a little bit more sensitive in terms of recognizing sensation and noting how the body is showing up in your practice, what is it asking of you, and how do you respond with kindness, with just compassion for yourself, and of course for your students also, if you are teaching this. So how are you feeling? I know it's kind of a very short practice. It could take an hour, just what I've demonstrated there, but I hope it gives you a little bit of idea, inspiration, flavor of how I have been practicing, working with my scoliosis. And of course, more recent years, my teaching has really evolved to including more somatic practices, which is something that I have been practicing for a while, but I'm really wanting to now and also feel ready to share it more with students. So do join me on my online somatic classes, and I would be releasing, like I said, I will be releasing a series of yoga for scoliosis workshops and courses in the coming weeks. So do tune in for and to receive my newsletter and information, connect with me so that I could post it and inform you when it's ready. Lots to share with you. And if there are any final questions now before we finish. Okay. Trust the process of life. Don't look outside, but look inside by finding spiritual, mental, and physical peace. Once you find that peace inside, you would then have peace on the outside. Yes. Thank you for sharing. We'll use a wall today during my class. Yes, definitely. You can definitely use the wall, because the wall is another prop to educate the body in terms of proprioception and where we are in terms of movement and positioning. Thank you, Jazz. Thank you, Edith, Christine, Olga. Thank you for joining, Roberta, Catherine, Deborah, Olga. Yeah, someone is asking about the schedule, my teaching schedule. It's on my website. I will post at the end the link to my website also, but it's really adelenecheong.com, where you can find under study online, where you can find information about at the moment weekly online classes, and then I'll be releasing a series of yoga for scoliosis workshop and courses in the coming weeks. I do highly recommend. Next week I want to work with the topic of alleviating and managing back pain. And yes, open to those living with imbalances and scoliosis, but of course almost every other person now might have Yeah, just by sitting at home so much, a lot of screen time and all. So yeah, it's how to alleviate and manage back pain. So there will be discussion and short practice where we will look into the area of healthy spinal care. Thank you for your participation today. Thank you, Marina. Thank you for joining me. Thank you, Fiona. Thank you, Arlette. And yes, so enjoy the rest of your day, rest of your week, and I'll hope to see you in one of my online classes. They are donation based. Please do join me, and I'll see you next week, same time here, to talk about how to help with alleviating discomfort, pain along the back. Namaste, everyone. Thank you, Amy. Thank you for your participation and presence. Yeah.